We'll start now.
All right.
Okay.
I'll repeat, I have some notes here, but these are to restrain me. Without these notes, I'd probably talk an hour. I'm only going to talk 20 minutes or less. For the last 50 years or so, the media has called the Korean War the Forgotten War. Probably been forgotten by the general public. But it's not been forgotten by those of us who fought in Korea. It's not been forgotten by those who are survivors, kinsmen of those 54,000 Americans killed in the war. Husbands, wives, children, cousins, aunts, uncles, mothers, fathers, they still mourn. The war started on the 25th of June, 1950. We were very fortunate to have as president Harry Truman. He's a man without a lot of formal education, but he had a ton of common sense. The very first day, he instructed the ambassador to the United Nations to get a resolution condemning North Korea. I will read this resolution to you because it sums up what happened after that. It took a few days. The United Nations Security Council Resolution 84 was adopted on 7 July 1950. Having determined that the invasion of the Republic of Korea by the forces from North Korea constituted a breach of peace, the Council recommended that members of the United Nations furnish assistance to the Republic of Korea as may be necessary to repel the attack and restore peace and security to the area. The Council further recommends that all members providing military forces and other assistance to the Republic of Korea make these forces and assistance available to the Unified Command under the United States. The Council then requested that the United States designate the commander of such forces and authorize said commander to use the flag of the United Nations at its discretion in the course of operations against the Korean forces. Well, 20 nations volunteered to send forces. Our friends the Brits always help us. The Australians, New Zealanders, the Canadians. 20 in all sent forces. It took a while for them to arrive. President Truman immediately called his military advisors together, decided what to do, and he acted forthrightly. The first day, as I said, he asked for the United Nations. The first day also ordered the 7th Fleet forward, put it under command of MacArthur, and so he could pick up civilians from Korea and take them to Japan. On day 2, he authorized the sending of ammunition and arms to South Korea. On day 3, he authorized use of military forces in South Korea. He didn't hang back. He didn't lead from behind. He took decisive action, appropriate action, right through the war. The war went on until from June 25th, 1950 till November. And then MacArthur had a brilliant idea, and that is to make an invasion at Incheon, just south of the capital of South Korea, by the U.S. Marines. The Marines made a landing there. It was successful. The Marines, God bless them, they're good. They cut off the supply line of the South Koreans and opened them up, 8th Army up to move forward. 8th Army controlled all the ground forces. And so they moved forward into North Korea. Now MacArthur had a dream. He wanted to unify Korea. And the Chinese were putting out the word, don't do this. He couldn't hear them. He dismissed that as bluff. And then as the 8th Army neared the border with China, there was a firefight between a small group of Chinese and Americans. He dismissed that as unreliable intelligence. He pushed the 8th Army right to the border, and suddenly 180,000 Chinese came to the war. Well, the 8th Army retreated in disarray, absolute disarray, all the way to South Korea. Now we were pushed back into a perimeter called the Luzon perimeter, a small sliver of land along the southeast coast. The Allies weren't there yet. It was touch and go. Are we going to be able to hold here? No. It evacuated the Army headquarters, the Air Force headquarters, all the Army Air Force flying units. I stayed there. I helped run an Army and refueling operation from the foremost airfield in South Korea. And Mustangs, P-51s from Japan would fly a mission, land, we would refuel and rearm and fly another mission, and then go back to Japan. We were processing, rearm and refuel up to 200 sorties a day, trying to hold this perimeter. Now the 8th Army was a garrison force. What that means is they were fat. They weren't trained well. They weren't ready to fight. The Marines were, the Air Force was. The Air Force was all ready to fight. The Navy was, but the Army was not. So this posed a burden on us. The Marines came to the rescue more than once. I admire the Marines. It's about the time that the Chinese invaded that I received relief from my commanding officer to go back into the fighter business. I've been in the fighter business all my career. I was assigned to a fighter bomber squadron. It was equipped with the F-80 Shooting Stars, a wonderful airplane, a single-seat fighter bomber. I'd never flown it yet, but I checked out in short order, and after 10 hours I started flying combat missions. I was very happy to do so. Now, as a fighter bomber pilot, we had a number of tasks to perform. We performed close air support. That is, when an Army unit out South Korea or the U.S. Army was under heavy pressure and was trying to fall back to get a more secure position, they would call us in to help neutralize the enemy. Or conversely, if the friendly forces were on the move and encountered resistance, they'd call us in to help neutralize the resistance. We also did bomber escort, airfield attack with 1,000-pound bombs, bridge attack, road reconnaissance. We were assigned a segment of road. We would make a reconnaissance of that road twice a day, looking at military targets. And we encountered them with strength. We had 6 machine guns in the nose of that airplane, very accurate. And the ammunition was armor-piercing incendiary. So if you hit a target, it could burn, it caught fire. We often found a convoy which would neutralize. We do dawn locomotive hunts. We participated in the rescue of downed airmen, very important. But the main mission we had was to kill Chinese and North Korean troops, inflict casualties. That's the way we were going to win this war. And we went about it with bombs, with napalm, with strafing, with 5-inch high-velocity rockets, and we inflicted a lot of casualties. Our sister squadron did as well. Together with all the other squadrons, we inflicted a huge number of casualties on the Chinese. Finally, we brought them to the table. They sued for a truce. We have a truce today. The war still isn't over. Hadn't been declared over. We operated down at treetop level. We hurt the Chinese so badly that they brought in, I call them coolies, civilians, veterans to hide their convoys during the day. They formed companies with heavy machine guns to bring down fighter bombers. They offered a reward leaving China to Indian riflemen and brought down a fighter bomber. They were after us, and we were after them. It was dangerous. It was very dangerous. In 5 months I was with the squadron. We all fought 25 pilots. 8 of them were lost, killed in action in 5 months. We were very lucky to live through that. Here's the casualties. It's horrifying. United States, 54,241. The South Korean military, 227,820, plus a million civilians. The North Koreans, 408,000, plus 600,000 civilians. The Chinese, 145,000. Nobody accepts that figure. It's incorrect. The best minds in the United States have figured out they lost 900,000. They were hurt. They've not gotten over to this day. They were humiliated. It was a nasty war. War is all about killing and destroying. That's all it's about. No glamour. Killing and destroying. Destroying the enemy means to make war. Don't forget that. Sherman said after he ripped Georgia apart, it was hell. It's true. It is. Be careful of getting another war. Over to you, Bob.
For those of you who don't know, George is an ace pilot. He shot down five enemy planes. Well, my friend George, though he's younger than I am, we're good friends, fortunately.
It's Uncle Bob.
But I want to say I have some notes in front of me, not like George to restrict my speech, but so I don't forget to say some of the things I want to say. I should have said right from the start, can you hear me?
Yes.
George was in the war to kill people and destroy the enemy. I was in the war to save lives and keep men alive. I had nothing, I was not in any combat. So what I'm going to tell you now is my history of why I'm in the Navy, how I got in the Navy, and whether I've done anything in the Navy or not. So if you're waiting to hear some terrific battle experience for the doctor in the Navy, you're in the wrong place. I'll give you a few minutes to leave. Anyhow, I was in medical school from 1943 to 1946. And if you were physically qualified, the draft was on at that time, if you were physically qualified and had no other reasons to be not drafted, you were going to be drafted. So my friend and I went to one Sunday afternoon, went down to the draft office in Philadelphia to join the Navy. And there was an enlisted man on duty there, and he said, well, you can't join the Navy because you're in medical school. I said, wait a minute, you got that wrong. It's just the opposite. If we don't join some service, we're going to be drafted. No, I said, you can't join the Navy. Well, he was wrong, of course, but he didn't have the sense enough to call a superior at home, someone, and find out whether he was correct or not. So that same afternoon, Sunday afternoon, we hopped the train and went to New York to join the Navy. How we ever figured out what station to get off on the train and where the recruit station was, I have absolutely no idea. My friend is dead now, so I can't ask him. I can't imagine going to New York and knowing where to get off the train and knowing how to find a recruiting station. But we did. We joined the Navy in New York. We both joined the Navy Reserve. And came back, and for weeks thereafter, I kept getting correspondence from the New York recruiting station for me to fill out, answer these questions, and send it back with. I never did any of that. Finally, they had my papers transferred to the Navy section of the University of Pennsylvania, and I went over there once a week for indoctrination information. And in the medical school curriculum ordinarily is 12 months a year. You get 3 months off, but because the war was on, we went consecutively all year long for a 9-month period. For 12 months, we had no time off. And in those days, we had a rotating internship. I was in a rotating internship. Rotation was, the work purpose of the rotation is to expose you to all the specialties during your internship. I started out in obstetric service, then you go to the neurology service, you go to the ear, nose, and throat service, the pulmonary service, gastrointestinal service, the urology service. You go through all those services to get information about that. They don't do that anymore. You can do that, but a lot of the specialties now start their specialty right the day you start your internship. You want to be a neurologist, you take a year's study in neurology, and then you continue on for 2 or 3 years and study just neurology. So you learn a lot about neurology, but you don't know anything about anything else. I mean, I don't approve of that method of doing it, but that's the way they're tending to do it now. The first service to do that one, as I recall, was the psychiatric service. Anyhow, we went through all of it. I started on the obstetric service, and after my 12 months there, I ended up on the obstetric service. I did through all the others. Well, there was another intern there who had not started on the obstetric service. He hadn't had that service yet, but he got orders to go to sea. Well, that didn't work, because he hasn't finished his studies. So that his sea orders changed from him to me. So I was the one going to go to sea now, and he didn't have to go to sea. The reason I was going is because I already had that service. I finished all my rotation. So I went to sea, and fortunately I was assigned to a heavy cruiser instead of a destroyer or a rolling destroyer. So I felt pretty good about that. But you learn an entirely new language when you go to sea. Now many of you may know this language. Whether you know it or not, there are no windows on board ship. There are no doors on the ship. There are no stairways on the ship. There's no right-hand side of something or left-hand side. There's no front or back. Those terms, there are no terms like that. You have portholes, and you have hatches, and you have ladders, and you have starboard, and you have port, and you have bow and stern, things like that, but you don't have the language you're used to. So that takes a little bit of getting. You don't go downstairs, you go below. You go topside, you go below. It's funny. So if you go on a sailing vessel, you've got a lot more, equally that many, if not more, to learn about sailing lingo. Anyhow, I was impressed by the caliber of the people I served with on board ship. The enlisted people were dedicated, they were knowledgeable, they were hard workers, they were reliable, and the same way with the officers. And I was really impressed by that. And ultimately, because of that impression, I decided that I was going to go for the regular Navy instead of the Navy Reserve, make it the Navy my career. And I did that. I became a regular Navy officer on board ship, and I never regretted that. In fact, one of the corpsmen that I have is an outstanding corpsman. The trouble with this, and I guess it's in the business world too, your best people that are working with you, you promote them, they always get good marks, and you get such good marks that the higher ups grab them, they want them to be a more responsible job, so you lose your best people. And one of the ones that I had on board ship was an outstanding corpsman. He ultimately went to officers candidate school, became an officer in the Navy, and ultimately became an admiral in the Navy and became the head of the Medical Service Corps. That's the opportunity you can have in the military service if you want to apply yourself and do hard work. There's another officer that I was associated with later in my career who was going to get out of the Navy, and I talked him out of getting out of the Navy. He stayed in the Navy, and he also worked his way up, became an admiral, and he became, in later years, the head of the Medical Service Corps of the Navy. Top jobs in the Navy. One of them is dead now, I don't know, but, well, everybody is dead as far as I'm concerned, but I'm an old man.
Me too.
I'm glad you remembered.
Really.
Admiral McCain was a 4-star admiral. He was Senator McCain's father. He gave a talk at the Armed Forces College up in Newport, Rhode Island one time. I never saw Admiral McCain without a foot-long cigar. He either had it in his mouth or he had it in his hand. And he couldn't sit still. It was here, there, it was everywhere. And he was up behind the podium, had just come in, was behind the podium. First thing he did was take the microphone off the podium. He said, I can't stand here beside this, on in front of this podium and talk to you people. I've got to move around. So he's moving back and forth, giving his talk. He said, ladies and gentlemen, he says, there are only 2 words that you have to know when you go to your duty station. Just 2 words, that's all you have to know. Works Harvard, if anyone think they don't want to read.
Yes, sir.
He said, all you have to know is, hey, chief. He said, you want to talk to a chief petty officer. Chief petty officer got at least 20 or 30 years experience. He knows all the ropes. He knows the place you're going to go. He knows what your responsibilities are. He knows how to indoctrinate you and help you out with your protocol and all the things that you have to know to do your job properly. Those are the only 2 words. And that is a true story. When I first went on board ship, here I am in charge of the medical department already. I don't think about being in charge of the medical department. I'm a doctor, I know how to take care of patients. But to take care of the medical, well, we had 2 chief petty officers on board. One was involved in administration, and the other was kind of a rough guy, made sure that people were doing what they were supposed to do and showed up on time and so forth. But they helped me a great deal in getting started as the head of the medical department on board ship. We had a wonderful sick bay. That's what they call a medical department, the sick bay on board ship. We had two large rooms that held 6 or 8 beds in them, separate from one another, but close by. So if we had to isolate some patients for whatever reason, we had a separate place to put them. We had plenty of beds, and they supplied this ship with a total amount of tools, surgical tools. If you had to do brain surgery on board this ship, not that I could do it, but the tools were there, they could fly someone in, one specialty team in to do that if it was necessary to do that. They had those tools on board the ship. There wasn't a whole lot of serious medical problems on board ship because most of the people were healthy. We had to be careful, though. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The one thing, they have what they call general quarters on board ship. If the ship is in danger or there's something approaching that they don't know what's going on and they want people to be at their duty station, they sound general quarters. Depending on where you are on the ship, everybody going forward goes on the starboard side of the ship. You're going aft to run your duty station. You're on the port side of the ship. So you've got lines like this way, not people trying to get past one another, just going this way. The general quarters sound that you're supposed to get to your duty station as soon as you can. The one problem that was most apt to cause a problem when they were going to the duty station were, if you picture the capital letter I, that's how an I-beam is. Say this is the I, and this, I can't do it by hand. Anyhow, you've got a steel beam and a separation steel beam up here, and they take that steel beam and they bend it, and that makes the hatch. The hatch doesn't go all the way down to the base. It's got about that much step that you got to step over, and the top hatch is up here. Well, when you're running to your duty station, you got to duck your head, else you can bring your feet up. Well, unfortunately, some people don't get that head down far enough. Bingo! You hit that steel rim and you split your skin wide open, and it bleeds. It bleeds. You think they cut their main artery of the body. The vessels in the scalp are intertwined with so much interstitial tissue that they can't contract like they would in other places. So the blood's just pouring out of every pump. Beat of the heart, the blood's pouring out all over the place. It's a real mess. So we did have some of those occasions. They have to be sewed up. It's the only way you can stop it. I'm sorry. I hope you heard all that. Just picture a head split wide open. You're looking at the skull. And also we had one fellow on board that used to have dislocated shoulder. Thank goodness in part of my training, and that's one of the benefits of a rotating internship. I had to be in the orthopedic service. I learned how to put back a dislocated shoulder. Otherwise, I don't know what I'd done. But anyhow, I had to put it back in dislocated shoulder. Then we had the colds and the allergies and the snivels and the bruises and things like that. And sometimes after Liberty, some of the fellows enjoy their liberty quite a bit. And one fellow said, yeah, I was sitting at the bar minding my own business and somebody hit me over the head with a beer bottle. He was kind of all messed up. Sometimes we had one fellow that fell down into an empty ship dry dock. Hurt himself very badly, very badly. Sailors are known to get in fights once in a while, and they did that too. Well, after I finished my residency training, I was sent to the Naval Hospital in Philadelphia. We had about 2,500 or 2,700 retired people there. It was a wonderful place to serve. A lot of pathology there, and had a lot of medical consultants with people from Hahnemann, Jefferson, Women's Medical College, University of Pennsylvania, Drexel, all these centers there that we would get consultants to come and talk to us. The cardiology, we had a fellow named Proctor Harvey, a well-known cardiologist, and he taught a great deal. The heart has 4 valves in it. 2 valves bring blood into the heart, the other 2 valves push blood out of the heart into the sections of the body. And you've seen on television a lot with doctors and nurses and anybody that works with patients have their stethoscope hanging around their neck. The stethoscope these days has 2 sides to it. One is a diaphragm, one is a cone. And when you learn to listen to the heart the way this fellow taught, you can pick up you can hear these valves open, you can hear them close, and you know where to listen for which valve you're listening for. So let me backtrack a little bit to say that you see all these things you see on television, somebody listens through your suit. You can't do that. If you're really examining the heart, you have to touch the skin. I never listened to anybody's heart, male or female, without the stethoscope being on the skin. The patient was robed properly, but my hand had the stethoscope on the skin. You just can't pick up the sounds you're supposed to pick up if you're trying to examine the heart properly and figure out whether the heart has some leaks in it or some stenosis in the blood isn't getting out properly. Because once you know where those heart sounds are and you can pick them out, you know when they're supposed to be there and what they're doing. Then if you hear some other sounds, you know that those sounds are abnormal. Either the valve is leaking or it's constricted and it's not allowing enough blood to get through it. You can tell that by listening to it. They do all kinds of fancy technical studies these days to find those things out. We didn't have all those studies. We could find them out just by properly examining the patient. Anyhow, I'm a strong believer of a good history and a good physical. You take a good history, you want to know what's bothering you. This is bothering me. How long have you had it? What makes it better? What makes it worse? When did it start? Blah, 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 blah. You can find out a lot just by talking to the patient what the problem might be. And then when you examine the patient, on top of that, you end up getting pretty close to what the accurate diagnosis is going to be without all these fancy, expensive tests that they do these days. They don't even teach a good physical examination anymore. They teach the doctors these days how to evaluate the electronic things that they're doing, the MRI and that sort of study. They teach them how to do it. I'm glad I'm not studying to be a doctor today. I don't think you learn properly. Anyhow, that's my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with professional society opinion. Also, in examining the heart for these specific murmurs, and the only reason you would want to do that if you are a cardiologist or you have some cardiology training or you want to find out about whether the person does have an abnormal valve sound or not, you have to position the patient. You position the patient on the side or leaning forward or in the back or on the other side to put the valve that you want to check closer to the as close to the stethoscope as you can get the patient. Excuse me. The next time you see a television ad with somebody going through the patient's clothes, remember, they're listening for a thump, 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 thump. That's all they're listening for. That's about all they're going to get. If you ever get a chance to listen through a stethoscope, do it and put it on the chest, and put it where you are, and move it a little bit. You get all kinds of noises when you move that stethoscope on clothing. So if you're trying to listen specifically something, you can't hear it because you hear all those other noises. I have a lot of cardiology. That's why I'm talking about it. Didn't need to bore you with the cardiology. After my internship training, I was sent to Japan, Yokosuka, Japan. This was during the Korean War. We had evacuees come in. They come to us in three ways. They come to Atsugi, which is an area a little west between Yokohama and Yokosuka, where I was, and it was west of that. It was a naval air station there. And they would pick up these patients and bring them into either Yokohama or bring them into Tokyo sometimes. It's further away, and then they'd get it to us by ambulance. And the patients had various degrees of severity. Some of them were very, very sick, very surgically sick, and they required surgery. Others of them, but I had, the first 2 weeks I was in Japan, I had 4 young men with heart attacks. 3 of them in their 20s, and one of them was age 34 with a heart attack. They all did all right. They all were eventually sent home, but they all did all right. I had one fellow come in, and he'd been told he'd had a heart attack, and of course he was a little upset about that. And I examined him and very carefully, and I said, well, I don't think you've had a heart attack. I said, I think you've got a broken rib. Oh, he said, they took x-rays. I said, well, I'm going to take a special x-ray. I think what he had a broken rib. Well, you can imagine how relieved he was that he had a broken rib and not a heart attack. But again, that's a matter of a good history and a good physical. You can pick up that broken rib. You don't get, you push on a bone, you don't get pain in a heart attack just from pushing on a bone, but you do from a broken rib. And you can get a broken rib, just by coughing. You don't have to have any abnormal. Just by coughing, if you catch those chest muscles just at the right time when they're all cracking, and you cough, they're not ready for a cough, and you can break a rib. And that's what this fellow had done. Nothing else wrong with him. The ward we had in Japan had 40 double-decker beds. We could handle 80 people, and about 98% of those people had hepatitis. Why I didn't get hepatitis, I don't know, because it's contagious. But anyhow, the thing you had to worry about was not the hepatitis. You had to worry about whether you couldn't just assume that every new patient came with jaundice had hepatitis. They might have I'm going to give you a medical term. They might have inflammation of the biliary duct system. They might have gallstones. They might have cancer of the gallbladder. Those are the things you had to be on guard for when these jaundiced people came into the hospital. Not just assume that they had hepatitis like everybody else did. But it all worked out. We did, as far as I know, my friend and I did, there were two of us on that ward, didn't miss anything. Alcoholism was a problem. Alcohol is cheap over there. You can get the best bourbon that you could buy for 85 cents a fifth. So if you didn't put restraints on yourself, you were going to get in trouble with alcohol, and some people did get in trouble with alcohol. That's another thing you have to be concerned about with the Johns. Alcohol, all alcohol goes through the liver, and if you keep drinking too much alcohol, your liver's going to begin to shrink. And after a while, it looks like a cobblestone road. You go to autopsy of someone who's got cirrhosis, the liver shrunken just like cobblestones on the outside. Before that, it gets big. Again, you can fix these things out on a physical examination. If you can't feel it, you can percuss it. You can find out how big the liver is and where it is. You can percuss it, and you can check with the spleen and the kidneys. You can check a lot of things if you do it carefully. Okay. After I finished that tour, I've had a wonderful career in the Navy. Well, I'm not going to sit here and brag about all the good jobs I've had, but that's about all I have to say.
No, tell us about the job you had.
I left out an interesting point. When going got very tough over there, President Truman authorized the Atomic Energy Commission to release 9 nuclear weapons to the Air Force. They were transported to Okinawa. They stood by to be used. He authorized the field commander to use those as he felt necessary. That's the kind of trust he had in the military. Most of them never used. Thank you for all coming.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a
Weren't
few
you an
minutes.
admiral in the Navy, Bud? Didn't you get to run Bethesda Naval Hospital?
Yes, I did.
I thought you did.
I said I had a great career.
I have a question for you, sir.
Yeah.
When you mentioned that the 8th Army was in full retreat and confusion, they fell back, was that to the 38th parallel, and is that how that was
They
established?
fell back to where they started.
Okay.
It was terrible.
And
Throwing
was
all
it
the
under-
equipment, disarray.
Was it under MacArthur's command?
Yeah.
During
Yeah.
the retreat, it
Yeah.
was under his command?
Yeah.
Was he blamed for that retreat?
I don't know, you probably did.
That seems catastrophic under his
Yeah.
command because he was such a famed general.
Yeah, we have more time if you want to take questions or if you have anything.
Any questions?
I had one.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had any combat, you were talking about people with heart attacks and so forth. Did you have combat injuries coming to you?
Oh, yes, we had a lot of combat injuries come in.
You didn't
But
come in?
most of them went to the surgical service.
Oh, okay.
Or the orthopedic service, depending on what the problem
Oh.
was. Yes, there were a lot.
I figured you did, but you didn't mention it, so I was just
No,
curious.
I should have mentioned it.
Well, now you did.
What kind of plane did you fly?
F-18 Shooting Star. First U.S. Air Force jet at the end of the war. Wonderful airplane. 6 machine guns, very accurate. Kill a lot of people that way. That's what you want to do.
That was a long way from the TBFs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.